has proposed a new national security law that could have drastic impact on the way people live in Hong Kong. It's part of Beijing's response to those massive protests that swept through the city last year. Remy Inocencio has more.
Communist leaders convened in Beijing for China's annual Congress and immediately zeroed in on their target, Hong Kong. We will stop violence and restore order, Chairman Wang Yang announced, suggesting the autonomy Hong Kong enjoys under one country, two systems was no longer on the table. It seems like this that China plans to subvert anti-government protests led by what they describe as terrorists and a threat to national security. The Communist Party has now revealed a controversial plan to bring Hong Kong to heel, banning treason, secession, and subversion. The announcement comes as protesters readied for another summer of discontent. On Mother's Day, riot police chased pro-democracy flash mobs, calling for Hong Kong's unpopular chief executive, Carrie Lam, to resign. Last month, police arrested 15 of the city's top pro-democracy icons, from politicians to lawyers and activists.
Technically, there's just nothing we can do to challenge it, because it's your mother's order.
All right, Ramy, we covered the protests in Hong Kong a lot, and then it seemed to have at least faded from the headlines here. Obviously, coronavirus has sort of taken is the lion's share of the coverage, and I actually really wondered what had happened to the protests, if they had fizzled out or not. So my question is a little bit twofold. It is, what happened to those protests? How did they sort of wind down, or did they wind down? And then what does this new security law proposal mean for life for people in Hong Kong?
Sure, Anne-Marie. In a word, coronavirus happened to Hong Kong as well as to the rest of the world, and that really basically trumped any kind of political desire to hit the streets. But of course, now that we're seeing that Hong Kong has pretty much tamped down its own epidemic, its own situation there, we're already starting to see some of this tension simmer back up to the public view. Case in point, over the past 2, 3, 4 weeks or so, we've seen scuffles between politicians in the legislature, and then even just today we have seen a couple several people protesting on the streets today, but it still hasn't been a lot in terms of how this possibly could impact Hong Kong. It depends on who you ask, really. If you ask people who support this proposal, support this national security legislation, let's say if you follow the law, then your life won't change. For example, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, she came out with a written statement earlier saying that only if you wanted to do treasonous acts, only if you wanted to collude with foreign interference, only if you wanted to, say, do specific things like burn the flag of Hong Kong or of China, then you would be in trouble. But by implication, if you didn't do any of that, then you would be okay. With regards to people enjoying freedom of expression, freedom of the press, there's been talk that people could self-censor themselves. But of course, over the past few decades, Hong Kong has really enjoyed a sense of, I guess some might say, entitlement, but especially freedom, that they can say things that they want, which their compatriots in mainland China definitely don't have.